We can now leave the floor to Mr. Michael Nolan of Global Dairy Trade, Auckland, New Zealand. Well, this morning we had the pleasure of meeting Michael Nolan, and the CLAL staff has seen many questions. So we were talking about the Fonterra auction, and he immediately said, it is not the Fonterra auction, it's a Global Daily Trade auction. So it is a GDT. I mean, we tend to speak about Fonterra. I've been following Fonterra for 14 years. So hence the mistake we always make. By mistake, we refer to this as the Fonterra auction, but it is a GDT auction.
Thank you very much for that clarification, and thank you very much to CLAL for inviting me here to talk about global dairy trade. This is my first time at this conference. Actually, it's the first time in this part of the world, and it is quite beautiful, I have to say, so it's a pleasure to be here. In preparing for this, I did talk to my friends at CLAL and asked them what topics they thought I should present, and I was told I should talk about how GDT works, the strengths of the platform and the weaknesses. So, of course, like a good politician, I thought I'd just take a slightly different angle on that and talk about the strengths and the opportunities. In particular, I want to talk about what GDT provides, not just to the sellers, but to the buyers and the wider dairy market. And also just give you a small look into the future of GDT and some of the developments that we're working on. But first, I don't want to assume that you all understand how GDT works, so if you'll permit me, I'll just spend a few minutes giving you a summary view of what GDT is and how it works. Most of you will know that we run 2 auctions a month. Essentially what we're doing is creating an online forum where sellers, the 8 sellers we currently have, can connect with the registered buyers around the world. We can set up a competitive bidding experience for these participants, and with sufficient substance, by which I mean a number of buyers, number of sellers, sufficient offer quantities, a range of products, etc., we can establish what is a credible market price on the day. GDT is, the technical term is, it's an ascending price clock auction, and I'll use this diagram to give you a quick explanation of how it works. 5 days before each trading event, we provide information to all the registered buyers. We give them, from the sellers, the offer quantities of each specification that are going to be offered and the starting price. And that gives the buyers 5 days to consider their procurement strategy building up to the auction. On the day of the auction, the trading manager will begin. This example, you can tell, is quite old because the starting price here was $3,000 per metric ton. That was taken some time ago, I'm sad to say. So the trading manager will begin the auction, and bidders have 5 minutes to place their bids based on that announced price. So the trading manager is inviting bidders at $3,000 per metric ton. How much will you bid? And the bidders place a bid in metric tons. So they have 5 minutes to do that. At the end of that round, that's the first round, the trading manager calculates the total bids received, the total demand, compares that with the quantity on offer, and with a healthy auction, there would normally be excess demand. The reason there's normally excess demand is that typically the sellers will set an attractively low starting price. The extent of excess demand, in other words, the extent of bids that sit above the offer quantity, will then determine the calculation of the announced price for the second round. So there'll be a short gap, and then the second round will be opened. In this case, the price has been increased to $3,300 per metric ton, and once again, bidders are invited to place their bids at that price. This process goes on through several rounds, typically 11 to 14 or 15 bidding rounds, and based on the standard laws of economics, as the price increases, so the demand falls. And the demand will eventually fall to the same point as the volume on offer. And that is essentially the clearing price. So for all the bidders that have continued to bid through each round, and the bidders have to bid in every round if they're going to win product, for all the bidders have stayed in bidding in each round to the final price, which is in this example $3,675 per metric ton, well, they win product at that price. It's worth noting that GDT prices are all FAS prices. Most of you will be familiar with the INCO term FAS, free alongside. That means there's no freight or insurance costs included. It's basically just the product cost delivered to the port of shipment. So that is the closing price, and that is the price that we then make public. So within a few minutes of the auction closing, we publish the prices, and no doubt many of you will be familiar with our public website. There's actually quite a lot of information provided through the public website, and you may not know this, but we provide what we call a historical data file. You can go in through the menu and access this. It provides a range of different data for each product group, all the way back to the very first auction that GDT ran, which was back to July 2008. That's a really quick snapshot of how GDT works, and I'm happy to take questions, after this or outside if you want more detail. But what I'd like to expand on is really, what does GDT provide? And I guess my answer to that is it provides different things to different participants in the dairy industry. So, for example, for sellers, GDT provides access to a global pool of buyers, but what it also provides is an internal price benchmark. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. For buyers, it can provide an efficient access to global supply. It is used, as Charles pointed out, as a reference for price risk management through the NZX. And it is also used as a barometer for global prices. So let me spend a few minutes on each of these. First of all, sellers. Sure, sellers get access to a global pool of buyers, and that's important for them. Some sellers use GDT specifically for that purpose, to expand their global market. But all the sellers on GDT are aware that the prices are made public. That's what we're about. And most of them place some value on having an internal benchmark. I'll just explain why that might be valuable to some sellers. At its most basic, all dairy companies are effectively trying to do the same thing. This is my view. They're collecting milk from farmers, and for every litre of milk, they're trying to create the highest value product they can, get the best price they can for that on the market, and by doing that, provide the best return to their shareholders. At that level, it's a fairly simple model. The challenge, though, in running that model is in establishing with confidence a baseline for calculating some of the key drivers. So let me explain what I mean by that. How can sellers be sure that the additional production and distribution costs for their high-value products, how can they be sure that those high-value products are providing a higher return above their base commodities? Now, how, for example, do they know which product streams are returning the highest? Or which milk components are generating the best return? Is it proteins, fat, lactose, etc.? Or perhaps, how can they be sure that their sales force are achieving the best long-term supply agreements in terms of price? They're selling above the market or below the market. All of these questions are fundamental to most sellers and can be helped by the existence of a credible benchmark price. And many of our sellers use GDT for that purpose. In particular for cooperatives, most cooperatives, for them, and private companies as well, but particularly cooperatives, it's particularly important that they can find a mechanism for managing the expectations of farmers in terms of their income. Particularly important given the volatility of the global market. And I can speak, I think, for Fonterra in saying that one of the key drivers for them in setting up GDT was to provide a method for better managing farmers' expectations about their income. So there is a direct calculation from GDT prices through to income for New Zealand farmers. But GDT isn't just a tool for sellers. We know from talking to a number of buyers that there are several aspects of GDT that they find value in. Supply access, for example, is not always easy for all buyers. There are some buyers in developing countries that have difficulty in establishing a strong credit history, and there are certainly some sellers in the US and Europe and New Zealand that have some concerns about exporting to certain markets and having to negotiate the complex import regulations. Supply access is equally important for the large buyers. Large buyers would typically be striking long-term supply agreements, but still they will have changing requirements, and when their requirements peak above their supply agreement, then they want to go back and negotiate. Often not, they just want to buy the stuff. So GDT provides them an avenue for that. Essentially what GDT provides bidders is a method of flexible procurement, the ability to buy the quantity they need when they want it. And this is seen by many buyers as providing the flexibility that perhaps they don't get from long-term supply contracts. One thing that buyers can be confident about on GDT is that they can be confident they're paying the market price and that they're operating a level playing field. And by that, I mean a playing field where all buyers are treated the same, regardless of their size or influence. Now, we've heard about the volatility in the price market. I'm sure most of you are fully aware of that. And on the face of it, there doesn't seem to be anything that's going to change that. GDT provides a reference price for managing that price risk. As you've heard, our prices are used for the NZX markets. We see this as an important growing market, as my predecessors have spoken about. On top of that, GDT provides a really simple mechanism for forward pricing. This is not a futures contract by any means. It is a physical delivery. But on GDT, the sellers can offer product in any one of 6 contract periods going forward. Contract period 1 is for delivery the month after the auction, contract period 2, 2 months after, and so on. So this enables both buyers and sellers to mitigate some of the long-term contract risk. So each seller can choose to offer product in any one of those contract periods, and they can lock in some of their forward production in contracts struck through GDT. And buyers can also benefit from this by effectively riding the market, buying a portion of what they need at each auction, and having the confidence of knowing that at any one time they're not paying above the market price. These contract periods are also helpful because they provide some sort of view of the forward price curve. And one of the exercises that we regularly conduct is we compare the forward price curve from prices on GDT with the futures price curve, for example, provided by CME or Eurex. Finally, for the wider market, GDT provides a credible barometer of global prices, and that's quite a bold claim, I think you'd agree. What is a credible price? Well, for us, I think liquidity is key to the credibility of a price. And liquidity for us is made up of the quantity sold. So just in the last 12 months, we've sold 880,000 metric tonnes of product. This has been sold to 366 buyers across 8 different product groups with a wide range of specs. So, for example, at just the auction last week, we were offering, I think, 12 different skim milk powder specs alone. And what's been particularly assuring for the platform, at least over the last 12 months, and let's face it, the last 12 months has been a difficult period for the dairy industry, with demand falling off and prices falling, is that even over that period, with that volume of product being offered, 97.5% of what was offered was still sold through the platform. So what does GDT face in terms of the future? Well, there's no question, like most dairy businesses, we face a demanding environment, quite a challenging one in some respects. We have a fairly regular stream of requests to provide more information, and we are constrained in our transparency to a certain extent. One of the things that you may not be quite as aware about is that because we handle the sales transactions for 8 different sellers, we're very subject to antitrust law. Actually, antitrust law is no tighter than in Europe. And we regularly take advice from lawyers to make sure that we're steering a safe path in terms of antitrust. So, for example, I know many people have asked us, can we provide up-to-date sold quantity data? Some of you will know we provide sold quantity, but only at an aggregate level and with a 3-month delay. We would love to do that, but so far our antitrust advice has prevented that. That's something that we're currently reviewing. It's fair to say that not every participant in the dairy industry places a value on price transparency. We're aware of that. It's something we continue to talk to sellers about. I think price transparency is here to stay, and really, like all commodity markets, it's just a feature of what we do. My personal view is the days of, shady dealings and hidden prices is really over for this commodity market, as it is for most other commodity markets. And that isn't a bad thing. But we're fully aware that not everybody sees value in that. It would be fair to say that all of the sellers that we have either specifically value price transparency in the way that I've talked about by using it as an internal benchmark. They either specifically put value on that, or they have learnt to live with it, and overall they see GDT, their participation on GDT as a good thing. We're also aware that there are ongoing questions about GDT's independence. I might as well front this. Fonterra is 100% our owner, and ultimately Fonterra offers 80 to 90% of the quantity sold through GDT. Nonetheless, I'm fully confident in the independence of our operation. We have a separate building, separate staff, separate systems. Fonterra receives no information from other sellers. Only the information relates to itself, the same for all sellers. And we actually have an advisory board which is made up of 5 buyers and 5 sellers. And we need to seek their advice before we make any changes to the way we operate. So we're fully confident about our independence, but I appreciate that there may still be questions about that, given that Fonterra is 100% our owner. We're aware of that. We're pleased to see a growing liquidity in futures markets, because we actually see GDT as being a complementary platform for the futures markets, and certainly see the need for better and more active price risk management tools in the market. Interestingly for us, the growing liquidity in future market has raised a small issue which we're looking at the moment, and that is one of information asymmetry. Currently, if you're a registered buyer, you get to see sellers' starting prices and offer quantities, but otherwise you don't see that. You can see Fonterra's offer quantities on NZX, but you cannot see the other sellers. So from a financial market point of view, that's not ideal. They prefer to see information symmetry, and that's something we're certainly looking at. So we've taken a good look at our strategy, and we really have 3 platforms that we're working on now: independence, transparency, and liquidity. I'll give you a quick snapshot of each of those. First of all, independence. The advisory board has worked very well for us, but it is, after all, an advisory board, and we believe we can strengthen that. We've looked at the principles of governance provided by IOSCO, the International Organisation of Securities Commissions, and we're putting together a proposal to actually strengthen the governance that sits over GDT in the hope that that might at least help to reinforce the perception of our independence. We believe we can progress transparency. One way is by putting in place a regime with sellers so that they can be more forthcoming in explaining forecast changes. We call that the forecast disclosure regime. But also we see an opportunity to provide additional market information, and we're working with our antitrust lawyers to see what we can review, what more we can release. And in terms of liquidity, we continue to work with new sellers to look at opportunities for bringing on new products, and we welcome that. We absolutely welcome that. Plus, we look at any other proposals that could improve the platform. I think we fully acknowledge there is no such thing as a perfect market. Ours isn't perfect by any means, but we see opportunities to improve it. These 5 aspects will form a number of proposals that we took to the advisory board last month in Chicago, and we now plan to move to public consultation. Now, we're required by our market rules to consult on any changes to the platform. But we're not doing this because we're obliged by our rules. We believe that GDT provides a service. Sure, it provides a service to sellers and buyers, but we believe that GDT actually now provides a service to the wider dairy industry. And in that respect, we're keen to hear from you to make sure that the direction of travel, the way in which we develop GDT, is in a direction that is in fact assisting the industry. So I'll finish by saying, look out for our public consultation, which will begin in June. We would love to have your feedback on that. Thank you very much.
Una parola, una domanda.
I have a question. I have a question. So you only have cooperatives? No private companies participating in the auction, is that right? Secondly, if a European company decided, let's say, to offer mozzarella cheese at the Fonterra auction, could this be included in the auction?
In answer to your first question, I believe all of our sellers are cooperatives. Someone will know Euroserum, are they a cooperative? They are, yes. So they are all cooperatives. But that doesn't mean that we preclude private companies at all. I guess to date, the platform has been more attractive to cooperatives. In answer to your second question, could mozzarella be a product group that's offered on GDT? Absolutely. We'd welcome that. We'd like to expand the range of cheese products that are offered through GDT. We do set a minimum offer quantity. We say that a seller really needs to offer 5,000 metric tons a year or more, preferably more. And so if it was one seller, they'd need to be able to offer that, or perhaps a conglomerate of sellers offering a standardized spec of some sort. But absolutely, we'd welcome that.
I have a question. Do you have to pay to be on the platform? Is there a fee to subscribe? Is there a subscription for a year, say, or do you have to pay for each single auction? And then again, I've understood that you're opening your doors to mozzarella. Well, what about quality Italian cheese? I'm thinking about Grana Padano or Parmigiano Reggiano. The other chairman sitting next to me is also the president of the Grana Padano consortium, so maybe they're interested in this, in participating in your auction. And I would be very happy if the audience ask any questions. I can see we have the director of Latteria Sociale Mantova, Mr. Turcato, that exports quite a lot. Would you be interested in offering your products on GDT, maybe together with other cooperatives as well?
Well, in answer to your first question, yes, we take a commission for product offered. It's actually public on our website. We charge $30 per metric ton for all the product groups other than lactose and whey, which are lower price products. We charge $15 per metric ton. When prices are high, that's a very good deal. When prices are lower, obviously not quite so good a deal, but that's our current charging regime. And actually, if you offer larger quantities, you can get a discount from that. So that's publicly available. Look, in terms of offering other cheeses, we would welcome a conversation about any products. The one thing I would point out, though, is that GDT is really it's a core commodity trading platform in its current form. It's not a platform for trading specialty products. And you would want to be confident that the product you're offering is a base commodity and is fairly standardized, and that that you don't offer a high quality product on GDT and then find yourself undercut with a similar spec. So, yeah, absolutely welcome those conversations.
Io attendo.
Questions, more or less the same questions about quality, and is linked also with the questions with CMA. On the top, each contract is defined by a standard quality. On the top of this standard quality, it's not possible to take an agreement B2B with the seller or GTD and to add a premium, for example, to get a higher quality or to get a specific quality, and, for example, to take contact with the seller and to define a premium to pay up to the standard.
Is this for me or CME?
First for you and
okay.
second for CME.
I distinguish between, because CME and us, we're different, and I think you have a different answer to this. So I'll just talk about GDT. So let me make myself clear in my previous comment. We don't sell standardized contracts in the way that futures markets do. Every specification is specified by the seller and is unique. So, for instance, if you look at all the skim milk powder specifications that are offered from Fonterra, Amul, Arla, they are all slightly different. And each buyer, when they buy, they know exactly which spec they're bidding on. It's not a standardized product. When I said earlier that you wanted to ensure it's a base commodity, I meant more that they are sufficiently similar to be able to compete. Yeah, sorry, your second question, just...
The question is if we are authorized to take contact with the seller and to get a commercial agreement to pay a premium up to the...
So, again, it'll be a different answer probably from CME, from GDT, but in terms of GDT, the bidders need to be fully informed of all the costs that they face. So before the auction, the seller tells them the starting price, which is a FAS price, and then they have to specify all the other charges that might apply: insurance, freight, plus they can specify other charges. Now, those other charges could be for additional testing, special packaging, special shipping arrangements. It could be for certificates of analysis. There's a whole. Actually, the seller can decide what those additional charges are for. So, for example, I won't name the seller, but there is one scenario where a skim milk, I think it's a skim milk powder or whole milk powder spec, has to be a slightly higher grade to go into China. So the way the sellers manage that is they put the spec up at a base price, and for Chinese customers they specify an additional cost. So yes, in theory, that's possible, but what we would be cautious about is the base spec needs to be still valid, rather than putting up one spec and then up pricing it to a completely different spec. Because if you're doing that, you should be setting the spec that you're up pricing to, if that makes sense. Yeah, so that's my answer, but CME will be different.
Well, it's on the same lines, because you're always looking for a base commodity to trade off of, because when you start adding in premiums or discounts into a futures contract, it becomes very not tricky, but very hard to follow, because you have to first come up with what is that standard, what is that premium you're going to charge, what are you going to base that premium off of. Whereas when everybody starts from a base commodity, then they know that, okay, I can trade that contract, but I know my product's going to be worth X amount, and what you're looking at is probably more of a basis between what your product's worth versus the commoditized product. So you would have to adjust your pricing to that. That's how you get around the premium in a futures contract. Oh. It's possible. But it's not going to be built into the contract. It's going to be built into, what your product, what you value your product at versus what the commoditized product is at.
Una domanda al signor Nolan, mi chiamo Pennati.
One question for Mr. Nolan. My name is Pennati. And my question for Ms. Nolan is the following one. Could you please tell us how much of the volume sold at each auction, how much is used by final user and how much ends up in the trading world? And I would like to ask the chairman whether he believes that mozzarella is not a quality product. You're right, I shall whip myself 100 times when I'm back to my room. It was not my intention to say anything like that. Yeah, but you compared it with Parmigiano, Reggiano, and Grana Padano. But of course, mozzarella can be top quality as well. Yes, absolutely. I'm sure. Sorry if I was unclear. I apologize.
In answer to your question about the proportion sold to traders or resellers, I honestly don't know. And the reason I don't know is that when a bidder registers with GDT, we don't ask them. We ask them that they make a commitment to purchase on the platform. We don't ask them for their use of that product. It is entirely up to the sellers to decide which buyers they're happy to sell to, and the sellers do that by setting eligibility. So the sellers can set each buyer's eligibility to 0 or anything they like. So I guess we could do the analysis, which we simply haven't. We do know, broadly speaking, that the large traders, obviously everybody knows who the large traders are. So I simply can't tell you. They're active in the market, but also we know that we've also got a lot of end users active as well.
But what happened in the Chinese market, if you were selling through the traders or directly to the customer? Yeah. Okay, it's not...
Yeah, we were selling through both.
Okay,
yeah.
Thanks.
Beh, una considerazione riguardo